Greetings, brothers and sisters. And so today is the 4th of July, 2025. I was going to say something else. I don't know what it was. 8 o'clock. That was where the 8 came through. A little groggy. I've been really tired lately. Like, not like I'm sleepy tired, like just, I don't know. So, to be a good leader, I'm not a big 4th of July person. I'm not, celebrating the independence from the British at this point is like, okay. I'm not a big fireworks fan. I used to like them, but not so much. Anyways, he wants to sign the big, beautiful bill today. That was Trump's goal, to make it about the holiday, because everything with Trump is performative. Like, that's, what a showman does, right? That's what a grifter does. Like, he tries to make it special when it's a fucking disaster. And so, if somebody's a good leader, they have to be a good listener. Like, you have to be able to listen. You have to be able to hear what's all your, the people in your organization have to say. There has to be a way for you to get information from, like, if you're the head of a corporation and you have 10,000 employees, you have to, be able to get feedback even from the, the people who have the lowest job on the pyramidal structure, right? Because, that's what it takes. Or, you need to be able to listen to experts and, what's going on in your industry. You have to, take all in information. I mean, that's, being a good leader is kind of exhausting, because that's, part of it. You have to have a way to get information. You have to be, open to getting information and looking for information and looking for feedback. The best way is through being connected to divinity, which I talk about, where God can get you the information you need to know in your life and, whatever it might be. So, it's important that you're listening and seeing what's going on because you're in charge of a social, a social system, a family. I mean, that's what it is. Like, you're head of a family. Human beings live in families. And if you're in a family, you got to be wondering about everybody in the family and how they're doing and what's going on with them because of, all of those reasons. And Trump just isn't listening. Like, I think he might have been a better listener when he was younger, but not really, because he's too narcissistic and whatever he is. So, Trump has it where all the people there know what he wants to hear and they say it to him. And, like I said, he doesn't have any curiosity, so he doesn't, he's a very shallow person. And he gets his energy, like people get everyone has, what is the energy that keeps you motivated? Like, as a person, like, what are you looking for, right? A lot of people, I want thumbs up on social media, or, I want people to like me. A comedian, it's the laughter of the crowd, right? Like people like Madonna want to be, adored by a massive amount of people. Like she said it, she fed off that energy. She needed to receive, like, that energy, that boost. And so what are they looking for? What's their motivation? And Trump likes the energy of his MAGA crowd people. But he doesn't do those rallies. Like, it's more about a campaign thing. And so right now, it's doing things that he thinks are, like where he can claim victory and claim things about whatever it is. And so we'll get to the big, beautiful bill in a second. But, it's false. Like, it's like to say he obliterated the Iranian nuclear facilities, and it was a success. The thing was a success, but he went too far because it's what he gets to brag about. And he loves to show that he can do things better and faster, Operation Warp Speed, than any other previous president or any other people. Like these are the things that motivate him to show off that he's better than those guys. Like that he can do it better, faster. He's got the best people, and it's what he can claim. Like he's realized it's all bullshit. Like it's like it was with politics and business are the same. If you can make it about what it appears to be, or just what you say it is, like when he brags about something, because that's what politicians do. They pretend that something that is a disaster was a victory, or they pretend they were never a part of it. They don't take responsibility for the things that they did that were now considered failure, and everything they do, they pretend it's a success before it's even really played out, and it's just smoke and mirrors. And so, whatever motivates Trump, it isn't hard work and doing a good job and feeling good about himself and his internal morality, believing in what he's doing on a soul level, knowing that he's doing the right thing. And so, like, that's where he is at with all these things. And so, I'll get to the big, beautiful bill in a second, but let's go to this first.
Peter?
Thank you, President Trump. I have two. First, on immigration. What made you change your mind about targeting in California farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business?
Well, we're not targeting. In fact, if you look today, I put out a statement today about farmers. Our farmers are being hurt badly by, they have very good workers. They've worked for them for 20 years. They're not citizens, but they've turned out to be, great. And we're going to have to do something about that. We can't take farmers and take all their people and send them back because they don't have maybe what they're supposed to have, maybe not.
That's the reversal of his whole plan. Like, this is how fucked this thing is, right? So Trump wants to roll out the fucking military and call this a national disaster, and we're being invaded. And this is what I was talking about, communication, right? So somebody got to Trump and said, if we do this, there's going to be no food, and we're already struggling because of the fucking tariff bullshit. Like, you can see there are things that aren't in the grocery store that used to be, different kinds of produce. You can see, like, if you go to Whole Foods, they have the produce says it's grown here or it's grown here. This comes from Canada, this comes from Mexico, like some stuff like that. Where is it sourced? Like people who shop at Whole Foods, and if you shop like for organic stuff on Amazon, it'll say where it's sourced because people don't want to buy shit from China. People with knowledge and health, because you can't trust it when it says organic or whatever. I was buying these pumpkin seeds, these pepitos, and they have some health. They have lots of health benefits, but not if they had these organic things they were selling in Costco. And I figured out that they came from China. I was like, oh fuck, like we're not eating fucking shit from China. You can't trust any of their stuff. I mean, that's been well documented, but people know about it. And so, they got to him. They got to the guy, right? And they told him, if you fucking don't stop deporting these workers, no one's going to fill these jobs. And we're going to go bankrupt. And these people were Trumpers. He was fucking these people over. But, he's for a guy who's saying that this is a threat, like these people are all terrorists and rapists and murderers. And, like they are fulfilling a need. And he's like reversing everything that he says about it. Like he's saying he's full of shit here. Because somebody got to him, he finally listened. And, somehow this came about. And like he's like, well, we're not going to go after these people. Well, you're going after all of them. Because it's all performative. And then you claim they're criminals and shove them. And so, this is a dangerous person. Because he doesn't give a shit. Like when he said they're eating the dogs. Like he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if he's right or whatever. He doesn't care how it affects those people or people that, if they're playing a role or doing these things. And so, I mean, it's like, this guy can't be trusted on anything. And he treats people shitty. And they're just going to call anybody a criminal. That's fucking dangerous as fuck, right? Because his one requirement is that you agree with them. that you do what he says, right? That that's his one requirement, that you agree with him. Like there's nothing else that matters to him, is that you are like, hey, you're the greatest president in the world. And if you start disagreeing with him, he calls you a criminal and targets you in some way, says you should be fired, all these things. Media and then everyone else, right? And so somebody that kisses his ass told him, this is affecting me and my business and people. And he's like, oh, well, we're not going after those guys. You're going after everybody, right?
And you know what's going to happen and what is happening? They get rid of some of the people because, you go into a farm and you look and people they've been there for 20, 25 years and they've worked great and the owner of the farm loves them and everything else. And then you're supposed to throw them out. And you know what happens? They end up hiring the people, the criminals that have come in, the murderers from prisons and everything else.
Yeah, because the murderers are really wanting to pick fucking cucumbers. Like, what are you talking about? So you're the one who's doing that. Like, you're fucking getting rid of good people that are working, that are fulfilling a need that Americans won't do. And then then that's your fucking policy by making this a militarized type situation. If they've been here 20 years, they probably have kids. That's where you're breaking up families and doing these things, right? And so for him just to put out this rhetoric, see, the issue here was when he came down and talked about immigration, it appealed to so many of the dopey fucking Republicans because, they think, it's like some fat fuck who's, fucking obese and, lazy and thinking some immigrant's taking his job, like some person that's, unqualified. But these are jobs that Americans can't fucking do because we don't have the motivation for it, right? We just don't, Americans you grow up with like a different level of what you're willing to do for money. Like it's just these people coming from hell, these difficult countries where like these kind of jobs are like a step up, and they're going to live short lives. They're not going to, they're going to work, it's like these hard jobs, right? And they're used to like, whatever, like the heat in these countries and, south of us, they're just whatever, like it's just they can work in the hot, whatever it might be. And so, like him demonizing all these people, it played well with the Republicans when he was first running for president, but it isn't real. Like, he said these things that he may or may not have believed in as a person before he was a politician, didn't know much about him. But it worked as a Republican candidate. And he's stuck with some of these talking points. And now he's putting some of these things into action, and it's a disaster. And he's willing to violate posse comitatus to do it and militarize this thing. And these criminals, as they say, they made that big thing about that video about these guys from fucking Venezuela or whatever it is taking over an apartment building to scare people. But how many people are actually having a bad problem with immigrants? Like, I have no issue. Like, I have no personal, contact or whatever. You see these guys working or whatever around, like I see them, but I have almost no interaction with them, right? Once my family and I went to Five Guys, the burger place. And the Five Guys were all like, Hispanic. Like, obviously, they don't know if they were like undocumented because they had to get, I don't know if they would but they were, immigrants, right? And, it didn't make a difference. I was like, oh, they'll probably be, better job, because Americans just don't have the work ethic we used to. And immigrants do. Like, we built this place on immigrant labor coming from shitty places. My ancestors came from shitty situations where they come to America and they work fucking hard. Our grandparents all worked hard because when they were immigrants, we're lazy pieces of shit compared to them, right? My grandfather fought in fucking World War I. When he was 15, he lied about his age. He fought in World War II. He was, volunteering, right? He played professional football, was a fireman. He built boats in Florida, in Boca Raton, Florida, for the rich people at Club Boca or whatever, fucking Boca West or whatever the fucking country club. He helped build that thing. He made fishing poles like good ones. Like they look like, I mean, he used the glue and stuff. The guy he'd had like an epic life, right? He had he was like an action hero. I'm a lazy piece of shit compared to him, right? I have some skills. I mean, I'm better than my dad. I'm a more complete person than my dad was. So, but this was my mom's dad, my mom's dad. But, I mean, so I've done a little bit better, but these people that came in that were immigrants, his wife was an orphan from Ireland, right? She was in an orphanage. These people fucking lived hard lives. They have completely different stories, right? My other two grandparents, my grandfather came from Sicily and was a barber, and his wife and my grandmother was a person from Albania, one of the worst countries in terms of like fucking poverty and chaos and dysfunctional governments. And they came here, they were like a totally different attitude. They didn't have the entitlement that we have, and they were like fucking, they were different. And so we know about that, like, and then you get soft and pampered, and like I was talking to some Asian kid when I was, I think he was from Cambodia, when I was whatever, and I said, why do these Asian kids do so much better? And he goes, because American kids don't want to do math. Americans kids are bored by math. And I was like, yeah, of course they are. That makes total sense. That's why you see all these engineers and people being hired from India and China and these other people, these other countries. There's a brain drain, like all the people that did my meditation from India had these great jobs because American kids didn't want to do this stuff to be an engineer. They didn't want to, they're not incentivized. You should see the pressure there is in India in terms of academics. And if kids commit suicide if they fail a test because their life is ruined and their parents and everybody's putting pressure on them to make money and lift them out of poverty. And so, I mean, this is like a totally different attitude than we have here. And so you gotta know all that shit if you're a leader. Like there's a whole thing with him. Like he wants the good immigrants. He wants the brain drain ones. He wants the ones that are coming here that are, we're poaching from other countries. These people grow up in their country and their country puts all this energy into developing them, and they go to America, Europe, and make a shit ton of money. And they don't, pay their country back, right? They were created by their country. The master charge, the third master, the Sajmark system used to lament this, saying, you should be loyal to your country because you could help lift your country up instead of going and taking the quick buck in America or whatever it is.
Else. So we're going to have an order on that pretty soon, I think. We can't do that to our farmers, and leisure too, hotels. We're going to...
He knows about that kind of bullshit, that Trump stuff. Like, he's the one to get rid of the ones that might work at fucking Mar-a-Lago, right?
Have to use a lot of common sense on that.
Common sense. That's the opposite of what Trump's doing. What's important to know about this, I want to do this meme first. You are here. There's a movie called Brazil, They Live, Fahrenheit 451, 1984, Brave New World, The Matrix, Animal Farm Lord. You see all this stuff. Mad Max, Idiocracy, Hunger Games. Brilliant meme. Like, the memes have really, and now I'm sure, with some AI help, some great memers. I mean, the memes have, the one thing that's overperformed over the years. I'm not sure from when this was. I'll get a date on this after I'm done with it. My wife told me about this last night, him giving amnesty to farmers. I was like, that goes against everything that he's fucking saying, all the rhetoric, right? I don't know if this was a campaign event or something, but he's got something here.
Illegal aliens lost 340,000. And we don't want bad for them, but look, we have a country to run, and we want to have them come in, and we want to have them help our farmers. You probably saw I got myself into a little trouble because I said, I don't want to take people away from the farmers. And we're going to do something I think that's going to be good because we want all the criminals out. Everybody agrees that we're finding the criminals, the murderers, the drug dealers. We're getting them the hell out of here. But
anybody he sends out, he's going to put in that category. That's the fucking fucked up thing, right? Anybody they deport they're going to claim they're a criminal. And then they're going to try to, make it look that way, like that they did with a couple of those people already. They're going to try to present false evidence and things because Trump doesn't want to admit he's wrong. So imagine if he did that to you. This is where you get into really poor leadership. When they make a mistake, and the mistake is that you're an innocent person being persecuted for something you didn't do, and it's part of his political agenda. Instead of like quietly reversing the situation, he's got such an antagonistic relationship with the media, except for Fox and whatever. And Fox didn't build on him before, but he's pissed everybody off that when he makes a mistake, he's going to be held to like any little detail, and so he's going to push back and try to change the story of your life, and that's fucking dangerous. Like that's that's no longer funny. His incompetence. It used to be funny, but this is like hurting people. He's saying these things here.
The farmers, some of the farmers, many of you sitting right here, I have 4 friends right in the 5th row, but some of the farmers, they've had people working for them for years, and we're going to do something. We're working with Christie, and we're going to do something that we're going to sort of put the farmers in charge. And if somebody...
How the fuck is that going to work? The farmers are going to be in charge? Like, if farmers are going to come in and say, this guy's not a fucking criminal, okay, let him go. Like, how is that?
If a farmer's been with one of these people that work so hard, they bend over all day. We don't have too many people can do that.
We don't have too many Americans. You're acknowledging the fucking reality that are going to bend over all day. Like,
but they work very hard, and they know them very well. And some of the farmers are literally, they cry when they see this happen. If a farmer is willing to vouch...
You mean when you grab somebody that's not a criminal and you take them out and they're providing a role for society, the farmers cry? Is that what you're saying, you dumb fuck?
For these people, in some way, Christy, I think we're going to have to just say that's going to be good, right? We're going to be good with it, because we don't want to do it where we take all of the workers off the farms. We want the farms to do great like they're doing right now. So Christy Noem has done a fantastic job. And
okay, so like this is, he's telling you, like it's Trumpers, he's telling you every day he's a piece of shit. And that he's fucking a bullshitter and a fucking, he's just a piece of shit. There's a comment that somebody read. This is obviously something, because this is recent. It's hot outside. He's wearing a suit, but everyone else is, this is whatever it is. So, they got to him, right? And I showed you a clip maybe 2 videos ago, and somebody was talking about this. I hadn't seen this part. But he was, they finally got to him and said, you got to stop doing this shit, right? So the thing to know about power is, and this is something that's taught in the Sizemore system, and I have, seen it play out every possible way. But when you get spiritual power, but any kind of power, it exposes your character flaws. It's like if you run power through a system and it's not wired properly, the flaws will display itself, right? They'll short out, when you use electricity, or when it's like if there's a hole in your plumbing, right? What happens? There's a leak. If everything isn't sealed and strong and can't handle the pressure, whatever you have that's weak in your system, in plumbing, it'll be a leak. In electricity, it'll short out, right? So whenever you run power through something, whatever the system is, and certainly your human system, the flaws get exploited. And with human beings, the flaws become more and more apparent. When you get political power and money power, what happens when people get money? Like when somebody wins the lottery and they have a drug problem or a gambling problem, it exacerbates that. Now they have all the money in the world to do the drugs. They don't have to go to work. And so they just become a deviant, right? Sexually, if they are deviant sexually, they use their money, all these things. Look at all these people. And, it makes something maybe it's a small thing. This is the samskaric theory, right? Samskaras are these impressions you get from past lives. And so when there's one of the teachings of the Sizemore system is the samskaras are just looking for the right environment to flower. And you see people who are great people, and then they become powerful in some way, or they become bosses, or they become rich, and they just these things that are hidden inside of them. It could be a good thing, like when you you have a hidden talent and you get a job where you didn't know you had this talent and it comes out. Some scar of flowers. It's almost like a program you have inside of you. It's some ability. And so, with Trump, it was, he's got these character flaws that have always been there, and they're now so obvious with his second term. They were there during his first term, but there was some control and some checks and balances, and Trump didn't know what he was doing, some insecurity on his part. But now that he's gone full Trump, and, there's no stopping him. And so now you got the big, beautiful bill, which is, the Trump's bankruptcy bill. It's the America bankruptcy bill, and it's just so much more than that. Huge power grab. It's all the things. Environmental disasters, moving large amounts of wealth from various, from the poor to the rich, to these things, right? And it's a dystopian bill, and it's Trump not being thoughtful, Trump's world view being warped, him being a piece of shit, uncaring, selfish, narcissistic, flim-flammy fucking businessman at a crisis point in our history. And he's passed this fucking piece of shit legislation, and he's going to sign it on the 4th of July. And it's an independence from your fucking freedoms and your lifestyle. It's like it's the opposite of the getting free from the British. It's, it's draconian, right? But, he starts to celebrate it because somehow, he got it passed. All right, so before you get into this, Trump's celebrating the biggest bill ever. Anderson Cooper was talking to somebody last night. I watched like a minute of this, and he said the big, and he didn't want to say beautiful. He goes, the big, and he paused for a second, then said bill. Like Trump's ability, the way to sell things. Remember, there was a thing called the death tax. And so that was an estate tax that the Republicans were, against because they have more rich people. So it was money over $1 million, and there was a tax for it. And, whether that tax is good or not, it's a way it's money that's usually been taxed. So let's say you have an estate and you die, and you pass it on to your kids, and it's like $1 million or $500, whatever it was back then. They tax it, and it's usually money that you earned and paid taxes on. If you're ultra wealthy, maybe you got around that somehow. But, you're being taxed twice is what I'm saying. And the Republicans called it the death tax. And people just had this simplistic idea that it was taxing you after you die. Like you were paying a tax to die, right? And, it wasn't an accurate portrayal, but, it's a great line, right? Death tax, it screwed the Democrats. And so Trump calls this the big, beautiful bill, a bill he didn't write, a bill he didn't read, a bill he doesn't even know what's in it. And, he's able to sell things. But I think the people are less likely to fall for shit like that now because of the internet and the truth stuff and all the rest of it. So we'll see how this plays out. It's passed now, and it's going to change things, and we'll see how that works. The Democrats, I think, are counting. I think they wanted to pass because they want Trump to implode. But here it is.
President Trump taking a victory lap tonight, just hours after the House passed his gigantic tax and immigration bill.
We're sort of celebrating like the biggest bill of its kind ever signed.
It's biggest. It's the biggest one.
And it's going to make this country into a rocket ship. Biggest tax cut in history, great for security, great on the southern border. Immigration is covered. We covered just about everything.
What Trump failed to mention is that the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates the bill will leave almost 12 million Americans without health insurance. That bill now heading to the president's desk, where he is expected to sign it tomorrow on the 4th of July, Trump's self-imposed deadline. The bill
Today.
Bill passing with a razor-thin vote. The president could only afford to lose 3 House Republicans. He lost 2, including Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massey, who said this.
Well, looks like the big bill's going to pass, but it wasn't beautiful enough for me to vote for it.
But enough Republicans did vote for it, giving Trump a major legislative win. But Democrats, well, they see it as a loss for millions of Americans. Just listen to House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who spoke on the House floor for a record.
Yeah, who gives a shit? Like fucking. All right, is there anything worth seeing here? Where's Trump? Is he going to say something? Here he's going up the stairs.
Playing a deep part in, a very big interest in over the next year. It's going to be.
He takes a victory lap here. Oh, here he is. He's saying something here, maybe. Did he say something earlier? I just
Passage of the bill in the House.
Oh, I guess he said something here. Let's go back.
To a rocket ship.
Yeah, good. This was the thing. All right, so that's his victory lap, according to the whatever it is. Okay, so let's review the bill from ChatGTP. I have that video that girl put up. So I probably won't put this up to the 5th of July. I'm going to skip a day. 4th of July, holidays, like no one watches shit like this because they're with their families. You guys are all with your families doing family stuff. So, you know, there's nobody on the news. I went to eat breakfast and, it's, I looked at Morning Joe because I wanted to see if there's anything that happened with Trump. And I started from the beginning, and they were reviewing some of their best. They were just taking news things from the rest of the week, right? Because it's not only just, it's the best possible 4th of July is either a Friday or Monday, because it makes for maybe Thursday if people take a 4-day weekend. But, everyone gets a 3-day weekend now. So, and so no one gives a shit about this, and people don't pay attention to it. And, Trump will pass this thing for his people, make it look like he's doing something patriotic. But with all this stuff, whenever you take an action, your intentions and the clarity of your thought and how much you included divinity in your soul and your decision, and whether it's something you should be doing and it's part of God's work and God's plan, everything's a part of God's plan one way or another, but, specifically adhering to it. I said this in my last video, everyone should pray, let God's will be done. God, I'll accept whatever you think should happen. And nobody wants to do that because people want control. That's why people don't really believe in God or have faith in God or are scared of God. Most people are scared of God, right? Master Chargy said that, the Americans, the Christians, are scared to face God. They want God's son, right? It's like you're scared to talk to your boss. So you go to your boss's son because your boss is scary, but your son is more approachable. And so, that's a really good, insightful thing. So, people are scared to go in front of God. They want a religion that's a go-between between them and God, because people know they've done shit that they shouldn't have done, and they're guilty, and they're, feel like a piece of shit, and whatever. And they know that there's going to be consequences. And so, people, their thoughts, and they don't want to include God when they're, people run to God when they're really in trouble, but, other than that, there's an avoidance. But, this thing, whatever happens, is going to happen. And I figured this thing would pass. And so, whether this is what ChatGTP says it is, and whether it'll roll out, first it becomes it's a policy. And I don't know how much they can reverse the policy in 2 years, but they can reverse all of it in 4 years. But the Democratic policies aren't any better. So, you have a whole difficult situation there, right? I want to read one comment from somebody who, was mad at me before, but now we realize I'm right about Trump. So, it's going to play out in some way. Not all laws have the same effects, and sometimes it can be even worse. But there's an attitude here, and, let's just look at this thing here.
I uploaded all 816 pages of the Big Beautiful Bill Act into ChatGPT, and I said, what are your thoughts on this bill altogether? Really give it to me. Don't hold anything back. And here's what ChatGPT told me.
It's a weird thing to say, right? Really give it to me. Hold everything back. Like, what was ChatGPT going to say? Oh, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to scare you. Like,
This bill, H.R. 1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, is not just aggressive in scope, it's a direct and deeply strategic attack on the democratic architecture of the United States. It masquerades as administrative efficiency and fiscal responsibility, but underneath it's a comprehensive blueprint for executive consolidation, ideological control, and systemic disenfranchisement. Here's the blunt truth. It's authoritarianism wrapped in bureaucratic language. H.R. 1 is what happens when an entire governing philosophy is based on dismantling government unless it serves the powerful. Every single chapter of this bill either centralizes executive authority, defunds regulatory agencies, strips away civil protections, or shifts the burden of governance onto the most vulnerable people in society.
See, we know this. This tracks with who Trump is. This is who Trump is, right? Trump has constantly complained about environmental regulations and other regulations, government regulations. He sued these various agencies and, has been engaged with, litigious stuff, whether it was to do with his casinos and how the Native Americans had a advantage over him in his casinos. And he complained, he said those weren't real Indians. They were, they weren't real Native Americans. Like, he just made shit up. Like, this is how he does things. He, is for the rich and powerful. Remember, Hillary Clinton, who his supporters really hated, and he used the lock her up thing, his big moment in that debate, where he came in and said all those, where she said, we're lucky we don't have a person with a temperament. Donald Trump running law enforcement, and he said, because you'd be in jail. And then afterwards, when they were chanting lock her up, he said, no, that played well before the election. And then he later came out and said, which I showed you over and over again, that he thought that Hillary should be, that shouldn't be locked up. Like, he protected her. Like, he had everything on her, could have put her in jail, but he protected her. They were friends. There were pictures of them together. He gave them money. He was a Democrat. And so they're all part of a club. Jeffrey Epstein was his buddy. And so he's convinced these people that he's like one of them when and maybe to some degree they think they could become rich like he is. But he lives in a country club. Like, he lives in a fucking literal country club. He has these epic fucking gaudy towers and, whatever it is, nouveau riche bullshit stuff that he does. He's getting a $400 million plane that's going to cost you another $400 million, $500 million to change into our Air Force One, when there's 2 more planes coming that are, that will be at a cost of $3 billion from Boeing. So he's spending about $4 billion on his private jets as government on the taxpayer dime, or getting a bribe from Qatar. Like, he is not like any of you. Like, he's not like anybody's, like these people. And so he identifies with the rich and powerful. He doesn't like checks and balances. And even though this is in his bill, it's the bill that he, the results are things that he can agree with. Like, they probably told him, you'll be able to get this done, you'll be able to get that done. There won't be any oversight. There won't be any, this was part of what Doge was doing. They're stripping away checks and balances, which is 100% what Trump's is about. If you hear what he complains about, it's these people that can oversee him. It's courts and judges and regulatory agencies. And so, of course, he's stripping all that shit away. And he's an asshole. And the next guy could be even worse. I don't know how you could be even worse, but, the next guy isn't going to be any better. He'll just be different, just like Joe Biden wasn't worse. He wasn't better. He was differently sucky. And, when he had his own group of people that were looting. I mean, Trump takes it to a different level. But once one guy shows you can get away with it, the other people will get away with it too. It isn't like they're like, all right, let's not do that anymore. No, they're like, oh, look, he got away with it. Let's do the same thing. And so this is what Trump's about. And it's clear that, this is, even without reading the bill, and I didn't put this into ChatGPT myself, this is as accurate an answer as you could predict based on what Trump is about. And these are, these are the Project 2025 people. They probably had this bill written before Trump even got into office. And so he doesn't know what's in it, but they're going to tell him what he's going to be able to do. And it's going to be all the things that he couldn't do before, because there were agencies and governmental safeguards that are going to be stripped away now. And so, he thinks that his plan will make America great again, but really it's about giving money to him and his people, because he doesn't give a shit about the average person, right? He just doesn't. You hear what he talks about. Like, he doesn't care about people who are less, have less money than him. He cares about the people who are on his level or above. Those are his people. Those are the people that he, bows down to.
Expedited deportations without judicial review, that's not about efficiency. That's about eliminating constitutional oversight to build a machine that can operate in darkness. Getting independent agencies like MedPAC or the Social Security Advisory Board, that's not reform. It's removing the brakes from a runaway train. Silencing classrooms and ending DEI funding, it's a cultural purge designed to codify a narrow, exclusionary worldview into national education policy. This isn't conservative governance, it's counter-democratic engineering. It systemically dismantles the safeguards of a free society. The institutions targeted by H.R. 1 aren't arbitrary. They're specifically the ones that ensure transparency, protect minorities, and maintain balance. Consumer protections, gone. IRS ability to audit tax sheets, neutered. Public health investments, slashed. Environmental and emission standards, repealed wholesale. This bill defunds every agency that stands between corporate interests and profit. It creates loopholes wide enough to drive oligarchy through. It paves the road for a soft coup. What's most dangerous is how legally sophisticated this document is. It's not sloppy. It's not amateur. It's meticulous.
See, Trump is an amateur and sloppy. Like, he couldn't, so this is something where, again, like, he didn't know what was in it in terms of Medicaid and these Medicare and these things. And Trump doesn't need his people. So, as much as Trump loves attention, loves being adored, whatever way he's being used here, again, other people wanted this to pass. So who wants this to pass, right? People who want martial law. People want, like, you stripped of your guns and your rights and the things that the Democrats have been pushing for years. Once they get your guns, you see what happens to these countries. They want to disarm the American people, these things, right? So these are the types of things they're talking about. Weaken the American people. One of the ways to weaken them, is like run a pandemic and give them shitty, whatever it is, a vax, all these things. I talked to somebody recently whose parent died of turbo cancer. Like, it was volunteered to me. Like, I didn't bring it up. Like, there was no indication that we were both, like, anti whatever it is, the official story. And this person's dad, they pulled a blood clot, one of those fucking, like, you hear about these things, but I met somebody who said they pulled this blood clot out of their dad's, whatever it was. And the vax, killed him. The guy had cancer and these things, and survived a bunch of shit. And then cancer, then the fucking vax got him. And so, according to this guy, right, this is what this guy was saying. So, like, my wife's mom, she got what we consider turbo cancer. So when you start having experiences that align with what you're hearing, and you run into people, they're like, yeah, that happened to me, then those things become more real, the things that you hear. And so, this is, these people are pushing for, we know that the system can't go on the way it is. And so they're trying to grab power because it's no longer the customer's always right. You're going to enter the fuck you period. It's everything like, fuck you. Yeah, but you guys are taking things away. Fuck you. And they'll blame you, and they'll make it sound like it's your fault. And, as they're, dismantling your life, right, your lifestyle. Because this is what has to happen. I've talked about this for years. You look at the numbers. Elon Musk admitted it. If we keep on going this way, we're bankrupt. No, we're bankrupt now. Like, he admitted at least that bankruptcy was in the future. But they're in the looting phase. They have been since Trump won, even before Trump won. This is all the way back to Bush's. This is, during the Obama and Bush's, they were all in looting phase. Moving American wealth into whatever other, personal pockets, and then whatever corporate and other shit that was going on, because America was done. It was like the end of America. It's a garage sale, going out of business sale. Like I said, whoever won Biden, Trump won, was going to be in charge of looting what was left of American wealth. And, it's still there, so, like, now they're doing it again. And I don't know how long it'll go on before you wake up and you're fucking broke, and you're like, you're worse than that. You're in debt that can never be paid back. Each American person owes like so much money. I'll cover that. I'll ask that when I do the stopping point. But each person owes, like, in terms of the share of the national debt, it's crazy. It's like we all owe $50,000 or something like that, right?
It builds the legal scaffolding for one-party control. It shifts power away from oversight bodies and into the hands of agencies under direct presidential control. It establishes surveillance and enforcement norms that can easily be turned on dissenters. It dissolves the idea of...
Again, that's both those things. In terms of them spying on you and also enforcing what they know. So, these are all things that might not play out today. It might not even play out during Trump's term, but it's going to be there. And anybody from now on, they can activate these things. Their surveillance of you, and then what they can do to you. And if they deem you to be, a threat to society.
Nonpartisan truth, replacing it with politically approved doctrine, especially in education, health, and environmental science. This isn't policy. It's a hostile restructuring of the republic, not done through tanks or violence, but through legislative subversion. The human cost will be catastrophic. Let's be crystal clear. People will suffer if this bill passes. Children will go hungry as food assistance is gutted and work requirements are tightened. Trans youth will lose access to care and their families will be criminalized for seeking it. Immigrants, many of them legal residents, will live in fear of removal or retaliation. Workers will face unregulated financial scams, higher pollution, and fewer rights. The elderly and disabled will face a future without independent scrutiny of Medicare or Social Security sustainability.
Yeah, which is already... See, like, this is a bill that they are getting you ready for the transition. So this has nothing to do with Trump, and nothing to do with the Republicans, and nothing to do with anything but them acknowledging that there's going to be a transition where you're not going to have Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security or food stamps or any number of these things. And you're going to be broke, and people are going to suffer, and AI is going to take your job. All these things are going to happen. There's there's too many people, and the debt is the debt, we're insolvent, and so America is hogging too much of the world's resources, and Americans are too entitled, and just all this stuff, right? Like all the things I talk about, and that there's going to be a transition. The system is imploding. The debt, the global debt, it's a usury economic system. It's a debt-based economic system. And so, it was inevitable. Everything inevitably ends. Look at the British Empire. Look at the Roman Empire, and all these various empires that have collapsed. The Mongolian Empire. I mean, you had these, massive, these very similar type of, maybe not global, but covering a good portion of the world, and you had this, these epic things, cities, and these wonderful things that were built, and all these things that were available to people. I mean, now even more than ever with the technological development. And you think this is the first time people have come up with AI? The first planet that ever had this kind of shit? All of it. Like, this stuff has happened before. And it's played out whatever way, based in, the maturity level and the understanding of, the development, the spiritual development, how much it aligns with God's plan and whatever it is. And so, at some point, civilizations and empires collapse. There's ruins of ancient empires under the ocean, buried under 30 feet of topsoil, 100 feet. Like, they dig they excavate these things. And, computer chips are only going to last 10,000 years. So, like, if they had any kind of levels of this technology, some places in the world, extraterrestrials, all these things, there would be, there would be no way to see it. There'd be no way for you to know about it, because it wouldn't survive. That it would decompose. So very few things last that long. Anyways, let me just take a break here. Okay, so I thought something was burning, so I got up because the thing happened last week. But, I was saying that there was a time where these things, like, people have been aware of this stuff, right? People have been aware of the economic system. Like my brother, he talked about the Federal Reserve in 1960s and 70s. Like he came back from Vietnam in the 1960s, and in the 70s, he knew about these things. And then he had a radio show in the 80s or 90s, and he knew about these things for a long time. There was like some people that knew about them. And then the truth community exploded, and lots of people knew about them. And there were videos about the economic debt-based system and what happens when you have a usury system that's, where wealth is debt. There's videos, money as debt. There's these two, money as debt, money as debt 2. There's a good, there are cartoon-like movies that people made. I hope they're still on the internet somewhere, but really well-made movies about this, for people just beginning to understand it. And I was one of those people. I was never an economic person. I've never been good with, I was somebody who stayed away from business. My friends were all taking business classes and things in college. And, I'm not one of those people. Like, I'm just not. And so, for all the obvious reasons. And, we all learn about it. And these narratives have been around for a long time. And there's a point where it's either going to be true or not. It's either going to come to pass or it isn't. Like, it's going to come to pass. And then this bill looks like, they're preparing you for something. Now, at the same time, we have these predictions and the whispers of the brighter world, where at the end of this year, the beginning of next year, sometime between 2025 and 2026, there's going to be a big event. And it's going to be the beginning of a series of events that is going to destabilize this planet in ways that we could hardly imagine, and how it will affect everybody and everything on this planet. And, so it starts, and it really hasn't started yet. And everything tracks with World War III, right? Stuff now going on with Russia. Russia's saying, I got a video coming up about that. And so this all tracks with all these things, right? The end of something. Like, we know something's coming to an end. Everybody fucking knows it. There's been more and more apocalyptic TV shows and movies made in the last 10 years. And it's just everyone kind of knows it's coming, right? Like, animals know it's like things like, animals will flee an area because they know a hurricane's coming or something. They'll start like, they'll sense it and just, it's usually too late for them, but, they're still ahead of humans. But like, we all know on some level this is going to come, right?
This bill treats social safety nets as disposable and human rights as negotiable. Final verdict, this is the dress rehearsal for autocracy. If this bill becomes law, it will not just change what the government does, it will change what the government is. It is a declaration that only certain people deserve protection, only certain truths can be spoken, and only certain lives are worth investment. This is the type of legislation autocrats dream of. Legal, sweeping, ideologically rigid, and dressed in the language of reform. If you believe in democracy, pluralism, justice, or simply the idea that the government should not be a weapon, H.R. 1 must be buried, not amended, not negotiated, defeated, fully.
So now it's about, is it going to come to pass, right? Like, is these things that the bill's supposed to do, is this, going to become a reality? And when? Like, when did the things get, when they have a law, it just takes, somebody willing to apply the law. So right now, I think YouTube still has all of their community guideline stuff and all of their demonetization policies still there. I don't know if they've out now changed them and updated them, but they're not applying them because things have opened up, right? My wife and I were watching that show, Kill Tony. We had heard Joe Rogan talk about this, but, the jokes that are being said that would have got people canceled a year ago. Comedians are being able to speak more freely. We see a total change in things, like things you couldn't say that now, are said openly. And that were being able, you could say them before and now even more so. And so It's a change in attitude. But people think, well, this is the new permanent reality. It isn't. What happens when the Democrats come back in and impose all these restrictions? And also, this big, beautiful bill is going to, it supports whoever's in power. And so when the Democrats get back in power, they can use these things in the bill, which they will for their own advantage, because the Democrats and Republicans both are supposed to do certain things for the people that control both parties. And sometimes one group pushes one thing, another group pushes another. And so that's where we're at, right? And here it is.
Even if there's an assault on institutions and democracy and freedom, one thing remains true, and it's important to kind of keep this front of mind. Public opinion still matters, citizen action still matters, and elections still matter in this country.
No, they don't. None of those things that matter. They don't matter. Like, both sides dismiss when the other side wins. Like they believe that something has gone wrong. That, if the other team side wins, there's some kind of a flaw in the system, and these things, whatever. And the people, are morons who vote. Democracy doesn't work. People are stupid. You can't count on people for self-governance. There are a lot of people on different levels of consciousness and intelligence. You see it. You can talk to people who are maybe great, nice, simple people, but they're unevolved. They're maybe first-time humans, whatever. Lots of them. That's the majority of people. The majority of people globally are, binary, double-digit or less IQs, uneducated. I mean, there's lots of illiterate people. All these things. And so, and you see these people, often they're suffering from malnutrition. I mean, you see the real poor people in the world. And, then you have mentally ill people. You have, people who are smarter but mentally ill. You have all these people. How many functioning people are competent people do you know in your life? How many people do you trust, under all circumstances? People with good character qualities, intelligence, thoughtful, good leadership abilities, I mean, we all suffer from some, like we all have our own personal flaws. And so people are not capable. There's not really much to offer. Humanity doesn't have much to offer in terms of evolution, right? Let's get back to it.
And we've seen it, right? All year. We saw it back in April in Wisconsin, where Elon Musk dumped millions of dollars to back the conservative Supreme Court candidate endorsed by Donald Trump, and he lost. People did not like Elon's meddling in that.
Yeah, what difference is that going to fucking make? You mean you got the judge in that's going to be righteous? You got a piece of shit Democrat who's a judge now in Wisconsin. There's a Netflix show, don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know the name of it. But it's a junkyard killing. And they falsely accused the documentary, pretty much in terms of the documentary, I mean, they can control and manipulate anything. But they show you the confession. It's a guy who owns the junkyard. And it's like his younger nephew and cousin who is mentally impaired. And they show the cops the worst corrupt interview of a person violating his rights, which all these watchdog groups and people have come in and said they got a confession out of him. And you can tell the kid's just, he doesn't even know the details of the crime, and they're feeding them to him. And they get him to confess, and he's like, can I go back to class now? Like, he's just confessed to murder. And he thinks he can just do what he just wants to get out of the room. Like, you see he's breaking down, he's getting tired, and he just wants to go back or whatever. And so, the evidence at least is compelling enough that all these groups are involved in trying to get these guys out of jail. And the kid's conviction was overturned. And it's like 2 seasons. I don't know if they ever did a third one. And the place is so corrupt. Wisconsin court system is so corrupt. Even after the kid was supposed to be released from jail, he's still in prison. And so, these guys making it sound like this thing in Wisconsin fucking mattered. It didn't matter. None of this stuff matters. We can say the truth all day long. It doesn't mean anything. And even if everybody agreed with the truth, or just they got rid of all their bullshit, and we're all spiritual people, and we're all, bowing to God's will, and we all accepted the truth, and we were all good people, the system's still going to fucking implode. Of course, that won't happen because the system makes bad people. The system pulls out the worst in us. It rewards for sociopathic, narcissistic behavior. And so, that's what's up, right?
This week, the Democratic-led court in Wisconsin struck down a 19th century abortion ban. Again, elections still matter a huge amount.
No, they don't. They fucking don't. Stop telling you fucking lying to the people.
Saw in a New York mayoral primary, where Democratic Socialist Zoran Mondani won that Democratic primary by a lot.
Oh, you mean you think a socialist is going to change things? I mean, it's just the opposite fucking, none of these things fucking matter. Like they're making it sound like if you protested, you go on the internet and you talk shit, the fucking bill's passed. And if the bill is what ChatGPT said it is a fucking disaster. And you guys want it to be a disaster because you want Trump to fail epically. But you guys should come in and take over, like remember there was this clone army in the Star Wars, the second series. The first two movies sucked. The one with the guy with the red, Darth Maul, whatever his name is, and then the Clone Wars. But the third one was by far the best Star Wars movie, and it was, the guy, Darth Vader becoming Darth Vader, and the guy who worked his way into becoming Chancellor, right? The Chancellor was the head of all these planets. It was like a democracy, a Congress. They had these floating things that they would go do their whatever business. And this guy he manipulated the circumstances to undermine a good chancellor and then become the chancellor, but he was really the Sith Lord and was going to become the evil emperor. And after manipulating that, at some point he went to this place where these people were cloners. And they created, out of one of those fucking, those bounty hunter guys, Jabba the Hutt, one of these Boba Fett, I don't know, one of the Fett boys, and he made these guys into what became those Imperial Stormtrooper, the clone army, and the Jedi found the clone army and didn't know what to do with it, so they turned it over to the Empire, to the Chancellor, who was the Sith Lord, and he wanted the army the whole time. Then he had this army of clones, and this is the kind of thing that you like, it's even if Trump doesn't utilize some of this dystopian shit, someone who's going to come along will. I mean, I'm sure he was capable of doing it, but once you pass these laws and rules, they're just waiting for somebody in the right period of time to apply them, which I said earlier. And so none of this stuff matters. Like whatever shit they got to do to get ready for this transition where they're taking away your lifestyle, it's going to happen because they have no choice. They can't provide you with all the resources that America's, shoving in our fat fucking ghoul holes, all the things that we're absorbing. And so it's over. The fucking thing's over. It's been over for a while. It's just that we haven't felt it yet, right? But we're seeing it. Some people have. Some people have already, fallen between the cracks. And eventually the cracks just open up so everyone falls in.
Sort of shocking upset because voters were tired of the status quo. The millions of...
Okay, it's just stupid shit here. So I apparently have 2 videos up from this piece of shit. I don't know how that happened. One big mess. Big poop thing there. So I asked ChatGPT about the debt. And it would be $106,000 per person. So every baby born, like if you divide up the debt amongst each American, that's how much we owe. We all owe 106. If we all contribute $106,000, a little bit more than that, some change, we would be able to pay off the national debt, right? So, that's where we're at. And the big beautiful bill is just a part of this thing. We're insolvent.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. Well, Donald Trump got his bill. It's unclear whether he understands what's in it, but he got his bill. Republicans got on board. And now all that is left for those opposed to this monstrosity is to make the Republicans who voted for it pay a political price.
Yeah, that's not going to even be, well, who gives a shit?
Attack on clean energy and balanced budgets. He's vowed to primary Republicans who vote for it, and he's attacked Trump online over it. This morning, before the House vote, someone on social media posted, "Release the unredacted Epstein files." Musk replied with a single word, "Yes." You'll remember last month at the height of their sniping over the...
Okay, so there's something here about merch. Here. This is it right here.
voting for and advocating for the bill. Now, despite all that, most of the Republican holdouts relented. House Speaker Mike Johnson could afford to lose 3 votes. Ultimately, only 2 Republicans voted against the bill. The New York Times reports that holdouts who visited Trump yesterday walked out with signed merchandise, photos in the Oval Office, and by some accounts, a newfound appreciation for the bill. Targets all of a blunt force charm offensive waged with precision by the president.
Yeah, so that's funny. They called it a swag bag. Swag bag. Trump reportedly won over GOP holdouts with signed merch.
I mean, I don't think it's like that precise, right? He just had the holdouts to the White House where he signed stuff for them.
Okay, dude. Why even trying? I mean, Trump is doing everything the guy said he was going to do. And by running Joe Biden, it's all your fault. And again, this was going to happen no matter what. But in terms of the official story, it's all their fault. Because what happened? Well, Kamala Harris was picked after a senile Joe Biden, who they ran with Parkinson's. They knew he had Parkinson's, and they knew he had, some people knew he had prostate cancer. He was obviously showing signs of mental fatigue, mental breakdown, severe signs. He was a disaster in the debates. They couldn't campaign him. COVID was rolled out, so they allowed him not to have to campaign. They demonized Trump, and they talked about Trump constantly. And the election was possibly, they're all rigged in one way or another, but this was maybe even more so rigged in terms of voter cheating. And they forced Joe Biden on the American people. And the guy was a time bomb, like he was a grenade, because of he couldn't do it. He wasn't going to be able to make it to a second term. And so Joe Biden got another grenade by picking Kamala Harris, who was the most unlikable person. Is she more unlikable than Hillary? Holy fuck, right? And she comes in and she runs a horrible campaign. And Trump wins again. After, all these false things, all these bullshit things they tried to do to Trump. The fake assassination attempt, but before that, they do lawsuits and all that other stuff. And so, if you don't do a Biden, and if you don't rig it against Trump, Trump's already out of office. He wouldn't have got this bill passed his second term, because when he came in, the Democrats had swept the House and the Senate or whatever it was. Trump, wasn't going to have what he has now. And so where he has no pushback. He wouldn't have got this bill passed his second term, because the Democrats would have controlled one of the legislative bodies. And so you guys all did this to yourselves, which is intentional. It's just, maybe they don't know it, but it is, right? So then there was this headline here about Putin.
Breaking news into CNN, President Trump has wrapped up a nearly hour-long call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, according to Russian state media. TASS, the two leaders discussed Ukraine, Iran, and other issues. On Ukraine, a Kremlin aide said that President Putin told President Trump that Russia would not back down from its war goals in Ukraine. Let's go to senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak with more. Kevin, what more are we learning about what happened?
Okay, so that's Russian state TV. Putin to Trump and call Russia will not back down from Ukrainian war goals, Ukrainian goals. Maybe he's just looking. All these things have to be taken with a grain of salt. But if he sees what's going on with Israel, he sees what Trump is up against, and all the bullshit Trump started. Remember all that stuff that he was talking about, annexing Canada and just stupid shit that he shouldn't have been doing. entertaining, but we're like beyond all that stupid shit at this point. Like, I mean, everything's such a mess. But if this is serious, then, like we're on track for World War III. We just are. Like, everyone should be able to see it. And if he gives a big fuck you, we're in now. We're gonna annex Ukraine. That'll be a big deal. And it'll change the balance of power because Russia will have all the resources that the Ukraine has. They'll have access to, the pipelines and things that run Russian oil to Europe and gas and things like this. And they're going to have to fucking, Germany is suffering. Germany suffered from a lack of, this came out in the Tucker Carlson debate with Ted Cruz, that when that, pipeline was bombed, Germany's economy and their manufacturing is shut down because they don't have any energy, right? They're getting all their energy from Russia. So, there's real fucking shit happening out there. And, World War III is a part of it. Let me wrap this one up. I just want to say one thing on the voiceover. So somebody left me this comment yesterday. Let's just feed into this whole thing here. I should have pulled the comment up first. A decade ago, I was angry about what you had to say about Trump. Over the years, I've come to find out you were 100% right about him. A true piece of shit. I don't know what I was saying about Trump a decade ago, but I like Trump. Trumpers would get mad at me, but I said Trump was my favorite character in the show. I was very happy the night he got elected. The whole week, my kids even saw like I was giddy for a week because of the way the mainstream media dealt with him. Now, I saw Trump being a disaster for all of us in the truth community at the end of his term, and he imploded with the Operation Warp Speed and these things that are, I mean, he did real fucking damage. And so I couldn't just base my opinion on him about how he, made me happy when he provoked the left-wing media and all the other stuff, right? But, aside from all that, I'm right all the fucking time because I don't have something that most people have, which is there is, some part of a defense mechanism that's there, that the system is good system and it's a godly system. And I'm talking about American system, but also the global system. And that somehow it always work out because we need it, because we're dependent on it. And, all those things. That's too big to fail. It's like, we would all die if the system collapsed, so it won't collapse. It's a delusion, right? Because we've never experienced it before. But I know I've experienced it before in past lives. And I kind of like it. So, being dyslexic and just being the kind of person I am, I grew up not fitting in and not understanding. Like, I was like, why are we doing this? Like, what is this about? Like, the older I got, the more I was like, this is fucked. No, this is also fucked. And, like, not understanding why people didn't see it the way I did. Like, why did other people, like, buy into the system? I never really believed in the American dream. I never understood it. This needs to be a part of the Journey series as well, because I want to talk about some spiritual things. And so, and until I started doing Sajmark meditation, and I took alternative, college. I went to 2 alternative schools, and I, joined the truth community, or I was always kind of a partial truther. Like, did I fully understand what my reaction was about? And it was really life-affirming, right? And, in the beginning, being right was important to me. And now, like, what difference does it make if I'm right or wrong? Like, shit's going to happen, and we're not going to stop it, or we're not going to prepare for it. I've just completely relaxed on it being important. Like, what I do here is not important. It might be important to you, and it might have effects on you. You might see these videos as important. But, it's just to be grateful and accept what's inevitably going to happen and connect to the divinity within you, right? And so this comment, which is a nice comment, it's an affirming comment for me. But, I used to, like, maybe 10 years ago, I would have liked to hear this, or even 5 years ago. It's been less each year because it's just, like, I can see what's going to happen. I knew it was going to happen my whole life. Like, I knew it was. Because I had lived through it before in some past existence, maybe multiple existences. Like, I've been in empires that were collapsing. And I was prepared for it because that's why I have the Apocalypse Now channel. Because I find it funny for some weird reason. When shit starts breaking down, it just is funny to me. Like, it just, even now I'm starting to, like, I can feel the happiness and the laughter in my stomach. Like, it just, and it's not that it is funny, because anything can be funny. But there's a cosmic joke here. And it's the joke I experienced when I first did the Sajmarg meditation. And the joke was all the stuff that people think are important, all the things that you're doing materially, and your real true purpose here and your goal of your life is inside you all along. There's a divinity within you, and that's your existence for being. And none of these things that you think are so important in the material world. And when I felt the joke in the form of transmission, I laughed this deep laugh in my, I get these introductory meditations, and it was like transformative. Like, I just was like, oh my God, this all is a fucking illusion and nothing's important. And so, of course, I can see things because, I'm detached from it, and, I still get sucked in, and, sometimes I have emotional reactions or past lives, things come up in some scars and these things. But, I'm connected to divinity because of the practice I do. And I've, experienced this before. And I had some bad lives where I was on the wrong side of this fucking thing, where I was one of these, bad kings. At least one life I know about. And so, like, I have experience of being both a spiritual person and being one of these pieces of shit. Like, I have both things in my past. And so I can see both things. And so, that should have value, but it really doesn't. I mean, it does to a few number of people, some of you guys here. And that's whatever it is. I just, like, it's there for me. But so, of course, I can see these things. Because anybody can. It's that you have a filter, a defense mechanism, because how freaked out everyone would be if they could see these things. But, like, I like other people, have, gone through something where we have just accepted this. And it's not like we're panicked or not, it's going to suck when it happens. Like, we all go through stuff. But it's, it's going to be whatever God's will is. And we should all be fine with that. There's a divine will coming, a divine judgment, and the judgment's about this system and the people in it. And, we all suffer what we're supposed to suffer. We all enjoy what we're supposed to enjoy. We all deserve whatever we get. And the one thing about this is, I could have a lot more viewers. I could have 1 million viewers a day. And, people could really see the good things that I have, like the gifts that I have to offer here, or the things I'm, being a conduit to, or whatever. Like, people could really get it, and I mean, a lot of times I don't even see it, right? Like, I'm not a fan of the show. I don't like to listen to my own bullshit, right? But, I mean, there's things here, because of all the stuff I've just said, that has value, which could have value to people. But that value is that you would have to balance out your material life and then start being a truly spiritual person. And people have rejected that for fucking hundreds of thousands of years. I mean, at least, very more recently, the past 5,000 years. Because you always have the opportunity to live a material life and then also have a spiritual life. And, maybe a little bit people flirted with it in tribal and village-based places, but most religions are fucked, and they're very remedial. Maybe you could call it spirituality, but, people don't have a good, solid connection with the divinity within you, and God is in you all the time. If God is in you, then, and you have a soul, why don't you have a connection with that? Because you don't fucking want it, right? People don't want it. And there's those of us, people who do the Sajmarg system, there's many of us who grew up with this craving for a spiritual life, like a knowledge of it. There's people who have always craved this and wanted it. There's people who are just, they become saints, they become spiritual people. And it just means so much more to them to have a relationship with God. And many of those people found their way to Saj Marg meditation. Some of them were better at it and more devoted than I am. And yet they quit and they give up, or they fucking turn, or they get corrupt, or they fucking fall. And, because almost everybody who has had a spiritual life has also gone to a high level and then fallen, because that's what happens to human beings. So that's waiting for them. That's waiting for each one of us. Like, each one of us has that in us. People who crave spirituality, crave inner connection, internal connection with divinity within them. And so, there's lots of people that came down here with a specific purpose from a divine place to do work with human beings, and human beings sucked them down to a fucking low level, like pulled them down to a lower level. And they end up being fucking piece of shit human beings like the rest of everybody else, because they lost their way. And that's just some of the tragedy of the spiritual life on the earth. And so, it's one of the worst places for this, partially because it's so enticing, partially because it's sensory stimulation, and then there's just dark forces that have a hold of this, and there's lots of reasons for it. But spirituality just, isn't a solution that human beings will accept. And it bums me out from time to time, but I've struggled with it myself, and I understand it. I understand why the people are like this, and it's whatever it is. So, that's my whole thing. Like, I've accepted it. Like, what people could get from me and the Gratefullness meditation. I mean, just the fact that the Heartfulness cult thing that corrupted the pure Saj Marg system that I do, like, that was a real fucking bummer, but I've accepted that, and it even becomes funny to me after a while. But, that's where we're at. And so human beings have an opportunity, one probably final one, to embrace the divinity within them. And the people that aren't capable, the people who are double-digit IQ, not yet reached that level, they're not, and the people who've gone south on a, demonic, narcissistic, sociopathic, anti-God thing, the souls that have those tendencies now, they have to be removed. Like, all the people who can't possibly do that. And so that's going to drastically reduce the population, which is inevitable. And then you'll see what's left. Like, when the smoke clears and people realize, what our narcissism and our focus on materiality and all these things have done to the world and to themselves, and that there's one choice, and that's connected to divinity within you, and you'll have to do that just to survive, that'll be it. We'll see what happens. There'll be a choice point. And human beings who have the capability of connecting to divinity within them will either do it or not. And for that, my channel has value. But, to prepare for that, or to get a head start, have become a pocket of the future now. But, we'll see. I don't have high hopes, but, I don't know either way, right? Because circumstances are going to change in such a way that there isn't going to be alternatives. You're not going to be able to go, there won't be the distractions you have now. There'll just be pain and suffering and regret and remorse and, a fucked up world that we fucked up in a way that, we're obviously all going to know that, we have to change our ways. And so will people, like a real desperate humanity. And, the consciousness and the energy will change on planet Earth to make it more conducive for people to meditate and go within to, get away from the suffering that's going on around them and, that they're experiencing. And so we'll see. But that, that's what we're waiting for. And it's going to happen or not. And then what the consequences will be there. If it doesn't happen, human beings will be wiped out completely, and something else will have to come take its place. Maybe the dolphins or the elephants or the dogs or whatever, he'll be, some other, whatever. But, like it's either happened or not. Like, this is on a, we're on a linear, in third dimensional reality, time is linear. But when you're in a soul, it's circulatory. So, this thing has already played out the way it's played out. And that's one of the things. If you understand that, then you just have to change your attitude and go through it. If everything has already happened, like, you can't change things because it's already happened. And sometimes, the future has already happened. And you just haven't come to that part yet, right? You haven't come to the part where you die. You haven't come to the part where you get cancer. You haven't come to the part where your loved one dies, right? You haven't come to, these things, right? You haven't come to the part where you have kids. You haven't come to the part where you have this great job. You haven't come to the part where, you found my channel, like, whatever it might be, right? You haven't, then you reach those parts, and then, like this person, something happened in the past 10 years where they were mad at me for, because they were a Trumper, and then something happened where they now are aware that I was right because they see what they couldn't see before. And so those things are there. And when people's consciousness open up, the veil is taken from their eyes. They see whatever they need to see, the truth, and and especially the divinity within them. And when that stuff is there, then we'll see we'll see what we choose. But it's still for us. We don't know what that's going to be. But it is something that's going to happen. It's already happened, so we just have to embrace it when it does. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important to the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.